All right, welcome back, part 2. So this is going to be somewhat of an involved problem, but it's going to illustrate a couple of points. All right, the first thing that I want you to look at is the beginning of the information. It says Lawrence Incorporated began operations this year. The company manufactured 22,000 units of its product and sold 20,000. All right, so what am I looking at right here? 22,000 versus 20,000. This means that I made more than I sold. Okay, so you can write make more than sold. So if that's the case, I already know from the previous recording and the beginning of these slides, was that if I make more than I sell, then the absorption costing income statement income from operations is going to look like it has more income on it. All right, and this is the point in which I'm going to prove it to you and kind of explain why that's the case. All right, absorption is going to be greater than variable. Absorption greater than variable. All right, so our manufacturing costs, we made 22,000 units, right? That's how many we made. Not how many we sold, but that's how many we made. 22,000 units. At a cost of $50 per unit, that's $1,100 in costs. The fixed costs are $330,000, and we're saying that it was about $15 a unit. So in total, we're looking at what? $65 here. That's how much? 65. I know I'm out of space here. $65. All right. Now moving it along. All right, that's 330,000 units divided by the 22,000 that I made, right? That's the same thing. You can divide it and come up with these numbers. All right, selling and administrative expenses. Well, I didn't sell 22,000. I sold 20,000 units. Now we're really looking at selling cost of 20,000. That's a 0. All right, so 20,000 units at $2 a piece. That was our selling costs, and that's $40,000 in variable costs. Fixed costs are fixed costs. We know that, right? It doesn't change based on activity levels changing, not usually. So we're looking at $290,000 in total in costs here. Okay, now that we have it set up, I'm going to compare the absorption to variable statements. All right, so our sales, we sold 20,000 units at $100 a piece. I don't even know where I have there we go. Each unit sold for $100 up here. I was going to say, I swear that data was somewhere. $100. So that is $2 million in sales. I'm going to try to keep this as neat as I can. We know that's a challenge for me already. If you've been with me for a little while, you know that's a challenge. All right, cost of goods sold, we're looking at there's $65 each, right? This is absorption. So we take the $65 a piece, variable and fixed together. We don't care about them being separate. So 20,000 units at $65 is $1,300,000. As I'm writing here, I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Bill Black, for whom I stole this, or he borrowed, example from. He's happy to share, but I just want to give him a little bit of credit here as I'm doing this. All right, he came up with this example. All right, so and I liked it, so here we are. So we've got gross profit of $700,000, and then from there we subtract selling and administrative expenses, right? And we subtract them in their entirety, $290,000. And we have income from operations of $410,000. Okay, so I hope we're all on board so far, right? That's our normal income statement. We subtract all the manufacturing costs for the ones that we sold, the 20,000 we sold. And here's the thing, right? What about those 2,000 units that are still left in my ending inventory? That's something I just kind of want you to keep in the back of your head. 2,000 units and $65 a unit. That's what would be left in my ending inventory. So let's just put that out there right now. I'm going to come back to that thought in a bit. All right, so now we're looking at this from the variable perspective. We've got 20,000. Jeez. That hasn't changed. The $100 an item, no big deal. That doesn't change at all. $2 million. All right, none of these things affect sales. It's all about costs. That's what we're focused on. But now we're going to subtract variable cost of goods sold. Well, variable cost of goods sold was just $50, right? So we're going to multiply that times 50 now, the 20,000 I sold, and we're looking at $1 million in variable cost. It makes my manufacturing margin $1 million. And I subtract my variable selling and administrative expenses, still $40,000. Okay. So we're at $960 for our contribution margin. And then I subtract my fixed costs. And here's where the difference lies. Let me do it and then I'll kind of explain it. Fixed manufacturing costs, well, I had $330 in fixed manufacturing costs, and I had $250 in selling and administrative costs. So we're going to put the $330 here, $250 here, and the total of those two together, $580,000. I know I didn't have negatives on those. I'm just trying to, it's not perfect. My signs aren't perfect. All right, so we get 960 minus the 580, and we are left with, that is not the right number. Pull up the trusty calculator. 960 minus 580, $380,000 in costs. All right. I'm sorry, $380,000 on costs, but income from operations. Okay, so now what happened? Why are they different? I didn't do anything wrong, I promise. 410 versus 380. What's going on? It's about the fixed costs. All right, that shouldn't be too surprising because fixed costs tend to be our problem here. What I want you to realize is that I took out all of the fixed costs under variable costing, not just for the ones that I sold. I took them all out, right? Because fixed costs we take out in their entirety. All 330, all 250. Whereas here, I only took out the fixed cost for the 20,000 units that I sold. So there are 2,000 units that are still sitting in inventory that have fixed costs embedded in them. All right, now before I explain that statement further, I just want you to grab one piece of information just to have it in your notes. I want to grab the per unit cost because it's going to play into one of my examples in a minute. I will get back to that fixed cost thing in just a second. Per unit, it was $100 a unit. It was $50 in costs. So your manufacturing margin was $50. Your variable costs were $2. And your contribution margin was $48. Okay, I just want to have that in your notes for as we go along here. All right, so let me drag this down a little bit. Let me illustrate something for you. What was the difference, right? We saw that there is a $30,000 difference. How do we calculate that? What happened? Why did that happen? Okay, so if we look at absorption, like I said, it's all about the fixed costs. So that is going to be your answer to this. If we look, okay, let me go back. Let me say, if we look at variable, we took out all of the fixed costs, all 330,000 of them. All right, and we treated them as an expense. Under absorption, though, we did not take out all the fixed costs. We had 300,000. Too many zeros. Undo that. Undo. Okay, 300,000 as an expense, which is the 20,000 that we sold. Again, too many zeros. Times $15. That's the 300,000. And that other 30,000 in costs is sitting in our inventory. And that is for the 20,000 units. I'm sorry, not 20,000, 2,000. Undo zero again. As for the 2,000 units we sold, I'm sorry, we made but we didn't sell at $15 each. Okay, so let me go back up so you can see what I mean. All right, variable, 330,000 in expenses. Here we go. Here's the 330,000 in manufacturing costs. All right, we took all of that out in variable, and we took out the selling and administrative expenses in both. So I'm not worried about that either. Okay, the fixed, the 250, we took out that 250 in both cases. Okay. But it's about these manufacturing costs. So here we took out the full 330,000, which is 22,000 units at $15 a unit. We took out everything, 330. Here, though, under the absorption, we only took out a part of it. We took out for 20,000 units. We had 20,000 units times the $15 per unit. right? So 20,000 times the $15, that factored in to this 1.3 million. That was part of the 65. All right, so when we did this, 20,000 times 65, that was only for the 20,000 units we sold. There are still 2,000 units sitting on my shelves, not sold, at a cost of $65 a unit. All right, so think about it. We made 22, we sold 20 of them, and that's that cost of goods sold, that 1.3 million. We still have 2,000 left over that's going to sit on my shelf, and it has $65 in costs per unit. $50 in variable, $15 in fixed. That $15 in fixed times the 2,000 units that we have not sold is your difference, right? 2,000 times 15 is 30,000, and that is the difference here. Okay, so let me show it to you again here. On here now, that maybe it makes more sense. We took out 300,000 as the expense. That was 20,000 units times the $15, right? That was built into this number right here, right? Because 65 was 50 and 15. So 20,000 units we sold, and the other $30,000, my own handwriting's throwing me off. We have 2,000 units still sitting in our ending inventory with $15 in fixed costs still sitting in there. All right. So, taking it on to the next step. The reason why we do this, the reason why we're looking at variable costing is because we can use it for projections very easily. If I wanted to know if I sold another 10,000 more units, what is the additional income to me? It would be 10,000 additional units times the contribution margin, which is from here, unit contribution margin. It basically says, how much do I earn for every single one that I sell? $48, right? We don't consider the fixed cost because we have to pay the fixed cost no matter what. So if we wanted to make more money, right, and we sell an additional, 10,000 units at $48 a unit, then we should have an additional $480,000 in income. And that's the reason why we do this, because it's easy to make projections, much easier when we set it up this way, that we're only looking at variable costs and taking out their fixed costs in their entirety. All right, and there's kind of proof of that. You've got, what if I sold 20,000 units, which is what we just did in the variable costing income statement. And what if I sold 30,000, 10,000 more? Guess what? The difference between these two is the 480,000 I just calculated. Because, there, see, I just calculated 480,000. If I'm selling 10,000 more units at $48 more per unit, here we go. I'm going to make $480,000 more money. And then we subtract all of the fixed costs. So that doesn't change regardless of how many we make, which makes so much more sense because we know that the fixed costs have absolutely nothing to do with how many units we're making. That's why they're fixed costs. Okay, so I hope that was somewhat clear to you. You always have your book for support, not just these videos, right? Okay, so hopefully this little example made sense. The difference is all about these 2,000 units you have not sold yet that have $15 in fixed costs in them. Under absorption, you didn't take out those costs. Under variable, you took out all of the fixed costs. All right, so under absorption, you only took out fixed costs for the 20,000 that you sold, and 2,000 that you have not sold yet are still sitting in your finished goods inventory with $15 in costs embedded in each one. So if you take those fixed costs per unit times however many units, that's going to be your discrepancy between the two in all of these. All right, I hope you come back. We'll do a couple more of these in video 3.